Hi, and welcome to Quarantinote Episode 2. My name is Dr. Jeff Borden. I am really happy that you're here just to talk a little bit about teaching and learning, especially under this context of the coronavirus. So today, I thought that it was only fitting to start off by talking about EdTech. Now, if you're not sure who I am or why I'm doing this, I would encourage you to go check out the very first episode where I try to give a little bit of my background and talk about how I've been doing this for 25 years. I've been giving dozens and hundreds actually of keynotes all around the globe. But here are just some of the best bits I'm taking out to spend 7 to 10 minutes with you talking about how we can improve teaching and learning during this weird and bizarre time that we find ourselves in. So again, today I want to talk about EdTech. Now, my encouragement to you to start with is to have a frame for EdTech. And I want to pause just very quickly and say here, for those of you who swore up and down you would never teach online, that you would never teach a remote distance class, an online learning class, my encouragement to you is twofold. Number one, just get that out of your head. It doesn't matter. We're in a situation where we have to do what we have to do. And yeah, it's important. Number two, if you have never really explored just how valuable e-learning can be, then don't talk about how invaluable e-learning is, because you end up looking a little bit foolish. There is a ton of very, very solid, well-executed, rigorous research that shows that e-learning can be just as effective in certain contexts and with certain subjects and in certain with certain methods and methodologies as face-to-face. In fact, there are ways that it can be better than face-to-face in doing certain things and trying to get people to understand in certain ways, in accomplishing certain tasks. So let's just throw away all of that old junk about, oh, it's not as good as, it's second best, I'll never do it. I've heard it's called educational malpractice. It's just foolish because people are talking about things they don't understand. You're about to go into an online learning context, and maybe it's not your desire. Maybe it's not your student's desire. Fair enough. Let's talk about how to make it as effective as we can make it. And so for the next about 6 to 8 minutes or so, let's talk through that. And to start, you need a framework. I like SAMR, the one that you're looking at here, to take the concept of something that is done in a face-to-face experience or another experience, and then how to transform it over time. And that's really what we're trying to do. So you can kind of think about this like, the old days you used to have the typewriter. Well, we were able to, substitute or kind of augment that through the use of word processors. You suddenly didn't need to worry about whiteout. You had all those sorts of benefits at your disposal. Now that got a little bit better as we started to modify the experience, because now you could start to do things like immediately include a citation, MLA, APA, whatever you want. That's pretty nice. That's a pretty nice modification. That means you don't necessarily have to go do all that research, write all that stuff down, copy and transfer it back in. That's a pretty healthy modification. But we're actually to the place where we can redefine it by allowing everybody to collaborate in real time at the same moment in a cloud-based word processing experience, still adding in those citations, bringing in video, bringing in audio. It really has changed or transformed the entirety of the word processing experience. You want to try to do that with your classroom experiences. So when we start talking about EdTech, a lot of people go straight to apps. But keep in mind, apps mean different things. There are mobile apps, like this one is one of my favorites. That it's an old app that was purchased by Google. Google Translate uses it. It's called WordLens, and it will literally allow you to hold your phone up to a sign in another country that's with another language, and it will convert that sign in real time to English so you can read it. The example I always like to give is this one here that says "Ropa opcional de aquí en adelante," which basically says you're about to go to a nude beach. And that's probably a good sign you'd want to know about before you got there, if that's not what you were intending to do. So when I talk about mobile apps, that is definitely one kind of app. There are also website applications. Websites are considered an app. Now, you probably don't call it that, but when we talk about EdTech, this is also what we're referring to. I think about things like All My Faves. All My Faves is my homepage. It shows me the 850 most popular pages in the US for me at one click away, but it also shows me the highlighted section there of 10 apps I've never seen before. And I usually spend 30 minutes a week going through those apps, just looking to see hey, is this something I could use in my class? Is this something that might generate interest or buzz, or I could use in an assignment? Most of the time, I don't find stuff. I only find stuff 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10 times. But it's 30 minutes well spent. Plus, sometimes I find stuff for personal use that's nice too. And then there is software apps, software applications. Again, I use software apps all the time. One of my favorites I talk about a lot is Audacity, which you see here, which allows me to open up a paper, open up a speech, and then open up Audacity as well as the rubric I'm using to grade. I grade my students as I talk to them, and I say, hey, I'm in paragraph 3, and I've noticed you've really diverged from the credibility statements that you made in the opening paragraph. Let me see if I can encourage you to do this, that, or the other. And I could talk to them. They can turn that on as they're listening to my feedback and looking through the rubric, and they say it feels like there's a coach standing over their side. Now, anything I'm about to show you, if you don't know how to use it, for the love of God, go to YouTube. YouTube is great for directions. You know, the younger and younger you get, people are searching differently, and I would argue they're probably searching better. You know, we used to search by going to the library, no more. Now, a lot of us transferred that to Google, and then we ended up getting those 10 billion hits that don't really help us, and we only go through the first page and a half of anyway. The next generation came along and said, wait a minute, I'm going to search for pictures because that's, you know, much more contextual. It gives me a lot better search results. And then today's generation search for videos. Really excellent idea, because then you can watch somebody in 2.5 minutes walk you through how to use this software or whatever. You can do it with games today, rather than having to read all the directions, try to figure it out yourself, go to other websites, just watch a YouTube. So let's start with a couple of apps. One of my favorites is GeoGuessr. GeoGuessr I use in my classes as a palate cleanser, but as someone who has always loved history and who's always loved geography, basically this is the Google Maps platform that they have put this game on top of, and you can simply get dropped somewhere in the world and try to guess how far, or try to guess where in the world you are. So in my classes, I like to do this as a game that over the course of the semester, the closest student to being correct gets some sort of prize, whether that's extra credit or a gift card or whatever. And again, it just sort of cleanses the palate for students to think about something a little bit different. But if I was in a geography or history class, I could absolutely start to use this to talk about why buildings look like certain things in certain places, how that is impacted by weather, how that's impacted by geography, how it's impacted by culture, things like that. One of the other apps that I like to utilize, in fact, my wife and I use this when we're working with our daughter, is Coffitivity. Coffitivity is an app that allows you to create noise, white noise, pink noise, different kinds of noise that actually can stimulate brain activity, creativity, things like that. And so this is really an app I like because you can set the decibel level, and then you can say, I want it to sound like a coffee shop. There's a reason writers go to coffee shops to write. It really does improve their creativity. There are apps like Microsoft Lens that allow you to take a picture of any document, any whiteboard, anything you've written, you've drawn, whatever, and it will not only crop it and make it nice and pretty, it also then sometimes allows those things to become editable. You can transfer them to a Word document. You can transfer those into another form, and then you can actually edit those things. You could take a picture of a PDF and start to use it. There's some really impressive things that Microsoft Lens does. One of my favorite uses of the cloud-based notebooks is Evernote Peak, that allows you to not only keep your notes and store your notes, but then to create flashcards out of those notes if you have a tablet like this with the cover that you're seeing on these pictures. So that's a good one to recommend to students as they're doing some studying. When it comes to how you start to assemble and organize your information, you might encourage either for yourself or for your students to utilize FreeMind. FreeMind is something different than an outline. It allows you to create your ideas in clusters and word clouds and in kind of mind maps, if you will, which can really be an effective way for students to gather their thoughts and really think through those thoughts as they're getting ready to create a speech, a presentation, a project, something like that. Similar to what I showed you at the very beginning that you can do in Word, there are bibliography apps these days, like MyBib or EasyBib or BibMe, where you can go out, you can find the citations you need. You can sometimes just hit a button and it will shoot it right into your document, including the in-text parenthetical, as well as the bibliography citation or the reference citation itself. Speaking of references, I really love to use social bookmarking sites. I actually have a couple that I use in both Wakelet as well as Diigo, but what's nice about these today is you can join communities where you can see other sites that people have saved and bookmarked. And sometimes if they fill it out, you can see why, what the meta tags are, what the notes are that they use. You can start to share with colleagues to say, here's something I found that will help in our discipline or in our conversation or in the way that we teach our students. When you find something good, you can certainly save it to something like Wakelet, but if you want to keep the text itself, I'd recommend getting the app Pocket. Get Pocket will allow you to go in and save all those really important things that you want to keep for a long time. Again, you can tag them so they're easy to find later, and you can say, this is something that the full text is important to me. Now, when you've got that text, you can also start to do some really clever and interesting things when it comes to word clouds. Getting your students to pull out all of the text of some document and see which words are used the most, they'll be the biggest, and which words are used the least, they'll be the smallest. On the left, you actually see the Gettysburg Address. And up on the right, you can see the recommended books from a whole bunch of different authors and news organizations saying these are the 100 books that you should absolutely read over time. So you can really start to do some clever things with word clouds. Now, the combination of words and pictures, you can start to create infographics, also extremely powerful, really good idea. There's a lot of free infographic makers out there. I'm a big fan of PictoChart, which is what you're seeing on the screen right now. But this allows students to start to take the combination of text and image and put it together into ways that really are quite relevant for people to consume information today, so that it's not always about the 5-paragraph essay. There are other ways to communicate that the rest of the world uses that higher ed often needs to get on board with, adding those into our arsenal of tools. When it comes to things like socialness, we can find other ways to do things like learn a language, like connecting to someone in the country that speaks that language originally, and you teach them English as they teach you French, Japanese, stuff like that. There are a lot of platforms that allow you to start connecting your students to other students around the globe that are really quite interesting. Speaking of connecting, we can also connect back into our own brains by using sites like Head Magnet that base things on the forget curve or the spatial effect that say you lose that information that you learned very quickly. You need to be reminded on a regular cadence, and those reminders need to happen over time. Head Magnet does that. It learns your forget curve, how quickly you forget something, and then it starts to provide those pieces of information back to you that are crucial. Another crowdsourcing option that I really like is Stormboard. The ability for you to start to create a place to go to say, hey, here are the best ideas we have, and let them get voted up and bubbled up to the top to say, okay, as a group project, here's something that we want to do. After they do that brainstorming, you can then throw them into something like Trello that allows you to really create an ownership list with dates and with the ability for the professor to go in and see who was assigned what. Did they accomplish it on time? When was it done? Did it affect other students who couldn't get stuff done because the first student missed their stuff? In my classes, when I do group assignments, I use stuff like this. No more he said, she said. There's just black and white. You did it or you didn't do it, and here you go. Similarly, you can get students to start creating to-do lists for themselves or to use it for group work, or even you could use it to create to-do lists for others, for your students. So Todoist is an interesting way to sort of keep track of all the things going on with yourself for self-organization, or again, for team organization. And then you can really start to get jazzy with augmented reality and some interesting stuff like this NASA app, but that may be a little more advanced for a lot of folks right now. So maybe we'll just focus on the first set. I want to thank you for your time. I hope that you enjoyed this Quarantine Note episode 2. I'll be back next week and talk to you about some new stuff. Thanks, guys.